And let me share my screen. Yeah, good morning. So, fear and greed index, we've kind of gotten out of extreme fear. We've moved back to 21. So, God, I hope not. But yeah, we moved out of 20 of extreme fear. We're now at a 21. So, we are at that point where we are trying to get back above. Now, if you look at where we were the last time we were here, price action was actually relatively the same. So if we were to get an increase in morning, afternoon, oh, did I just lag right there? Did I just lag? Question mark. Oh, sh okay. Uh, all right. Let me turn off my cam. Maybe that's gonna help. Yeah, I guess these sessions are gonna be off cam from now on up until uh my Wi-Fi becomes or gets better. But yeah, looking at it, we are in fear rather than extreme fear. 2 point increase from where we were last week, and we are basically at the same place we were the last time we were at 21. You can see right over here, price was basically where we are right now. So, if we just take it at face value, there appears to be a direct correlation. However, let's try to look at what we are up against. So on the 1 day, more shorts than their longs, but we do have clusters to the bottom. 7 day, more longs than shorts, and you can see there are more clusters to the bottom. On the 30 day, almost the same amount. Shorts do have more cumulative leverage, but we can see that uh, price action is closer to this larger cluster to the upside. And 180 day, the shorts still outweigh the longs, and I believe on the 1 year it'll be the same. But what is telling is that the longs are gaining some strength, and we could probably flush out some more shorts before we're done. Looking at the RSI heat map, 4 hour is neutral, right? And if we jump to the 24 hour, it is still neutral. There are some coins in oversold, so the likes of Bitcoin Cash, ADA, Doge are in the weak zone. So we can probably look at those, and then we can look at WLD and Aster to the upside. On the 1 week, we've regained some strength. We moved back to weak, but stuff like BCH, Bitcoin Cash, and ADA are still oversold. Hey Toddy, hey Nando, welcome to the show, guys. Looking at the liquidation heat map, you can see that there is a hotspot down here at around 64,000, but the main hotspot on the 24 hours at around 66,000. Going to the 3 day, right? Still hotspots to the downside, 64,000, without any real ones to the upside. Going to the 1 week, we have one all the way to 62.3 thousand. Let's go to the 1 month. There should be some to the upside, yeah. 67,668. And of course, when we go to the 6 month, which has been sort of our long-term time frame, we can see that there are two main large hotspots at around 82,000 and 94,000. That about does it for the fundamentals. Let's look at some news. So Solana surges as SpaceX IPO drives tokenized stock trading boom. So Solana climbed roughly 14%, whereas Bitcoin gained 5.9 and Ethereum rose nearly 9%. So it appears tied to SpaceX's historic debut. Uh, On the same day SpaceX listed, tokenized versions of the stock went live on Solana through Backpack Securities and Sunrise. Tokenized SPCX became the top traded tokenized equity on Solana and within hours generated over 15 million in volume and accumulating $36.3 million in swap volume through June 16. So this reinforces Solana's network narrative, and Solana now faces a technical test at the $75 level, which analysts at GFM review identified as a floor of a multi-month consolidation range. A sustained move above that could open a path toward $83 and eventually 98 while rejection risks a pullback towards $70. So let's certainly look at Solana's technicals because this does seem fairly plausible based on some things that we talked about last week. So it's interesting that it is news, right? It's published 3 hours ago. Give me one sec, guys. All right, I'm back. So again, if I do take a pause, it's probably because I'm taking the time to blow my nose. I do have a cold right now. I don't know how I got it, but you know, is what it is. I sincerely hope Batman doesn't come back, but it could be what happens. So, published 5 hours ago, Bitcoin pulls back to 65K as Fed decision looms. So if we go down all the way here, Fed Reserve began its two-day meeting on Tuesday with a rate decision expected on Wednesday. Lo and behold, that is today. Markets overwhelmingly expect the central bank to hold rates steady at 3.5% to 3.75%, with the CME FedWatch tool citing a probability above 96% to no change. That's to be expected, right? We can't always have cuts, and again, uh, the U.S. economy is in a very tight spot. So, productivity is not great, and inflation is not great. So cutting will just lead to more inflation, and that might increase output. But again, what they've noticed is that it isn't increasing output. So the only tools that they could possibly do is quantitative easing, right? But the issue with quantitative easing is that they're unsure if they're going to have the same outcome as before. So the last time the US Federal Reserve did quantitative easing, it didn't really affect anyone, right? What ended up happening was Wall Street stocks ended up getting inflated, so they were happy that the stocks numerically and or nominally were increasing in value, and thankfully for the average Joe, it didn't really affect prices. However, if you increase or if you do quantitative easing now, with sort of how we know the US economy to react, it might not have the same effect that we ideally want. Whereas INTC structured a bullish and test. What is a bullish and tested? Despite gaining small profit on Monday, I'm sure. Yeah, we can check them out in a bit. So yeah, formal signing ceremony for the U.S.-Iran agreement scheduled June 19 in Switzerland. Till then, the deal remains preliminary. Full text has not been made public. Israeli officials said they will not be bound by its terms, and Iranian hardliners have voiced opposition. Blockchain analytics firm Sentiment noted that sentiment across Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP have climbed following the agreement, suggesting a reduction in geopolitical uncertainty. Standard Chattered has argued that Bitcoin has formed its cycle bottom at $59,000 earlier this month through the near-term path remains hostage to Wednesday's Fed decision and Friday's signing. So, I mean, we're going to see quite a huge reaction in TradingView, I do think. Uh, Actually, we'll probably have a look at it later, at like 2, but we'll see how it goes. Hey, Android, welcome. Looking at another thing. Over 75 tankers head toward Hormuz ahead of U.S.-Iran deal signing Friday. So, vessel tracking data shows more than 75 tankers heading toward the Middle East, with major operators including Sinocor and Marin Tankers Management among those repositioning. Uh, Began weeks ago, Bloomberg reported in early June that Greek tanker owners were moving vessels closer to the Persian Gulf in a bet on sky-high freight rates once the strait reopens. Blah, blah, blah. Deal framework. U.S. Iran announced a framework agreement. Under the deal, Iran would ensure toll-free passage through the Strait of Hormuz in 60 days, while the U.S. lifts its naval blockade on Iranian ports. However, U.S. officials have warned that a full operational reopening could take weeks due to the demining operations. Um, The IEA and its monthly oil market release Wednesday issued its first 2027 outlook, projecting the oil market will enter a substantial supply surplus as Gulf production returns. The agency forecasts global oil supply will surge by 8 million barrels per day, while demand rises by just 2 million barrels per day, implying a surplus exceeding 5 million bpd, having already risen to nearly 12 million bpd from a May low of 9.6 million. Blah, 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 blah. Brent forecast to cut its four-quarter Brent forecast to $80 per barrel from $90 per barrel, citing diminished upside risk from the deal. Both Brent crude and West Texas Intermediate benchmarks fell roughly 5% in each of the sessions preceding Wednesday's report, hitting three-month lows. So if this is true, then we could still have a chance to get out of our oil long. However, on Friday, if things go south, oil is going to skyrocket to the moon. So that is something we have to consider, right? And that about does it for the fundamentals. Let's have a look at the technicals because that is the fun part. Let me also start, uh, actually, let's rush into SRE and INTC. Is the, yeah, BBA Sempra. Oh, okay. So where did you enter SRE, if I may ask? Entered June 12, so here. Okay. Well, from the daily chart, you are in drawdown. Yeah. So you are in drawdown on the daily chart, right? That being said, if you don't break your 200-day moving average, I still think you have a decent chance of getting back up. Now, you're right. This could be an inverted head and shoulders or a triple cheek, right, from here to here. But actually, this could be the start of the right shoulder, right? I get that you could have placed it here, but to me, this is a little tight. So you could say that this right here was the head move, and you're now setting up the right shoulder. So my invalidation point will really just be if you close below that 200-day moving average, probably cut your losses because notice that your delta pulse wave is hitting that zero line. You are above your zero line. So this could become like a goose head and then a continuation, right? So as long as you're able to break the point of interest at 92, I still think you can either get out break even or you can probably break out to 99, right? If we pull out the predictive ranges, hold on, give me one sec, guys. Okay, I'm back. I still think you have a decent chance here. I still think there's a decent play to be had. Yeah. Let's check support resistance. This region's really strong. You need to break above it, and a close below the 200-day moving average about does it. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, I think we're pretty clear on that. Let's check out INTC. I don't know why it's taking a while. Can you guys still hear me? Sorry guys. Can you guys still hear me? All right. Yeah, I think I connected to the 2.4G Wi-Fi. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, my bad, guys. All right. What was the last thing you heard? Were we able to go over SRE properly? All right, I'll just go over SRE again. Okay. Anyways, I do think only now are you forming the right shoulder. I don't think this is something you consider as a like earlier. So the right shoulder is only formed now, I would argue, not really from this one, because of the fact that while it is tight, right? Mm, yeah, no, I don't know if I consider that. I really do think only now are we forming that right shoulder. So again, oh yeah, all right, perfect. So again, break below and close below the 200-day moving average. I think it cut your losses. That's going to continue to come down. But if you're able to break above or sustain and stay above the 200-day moving average, and you're able to get beyond 92.57, that really opens the door to a move to around 99.77, right? This could turn into a goose head, right? Continuation. Zero line is set uh, to basically go back above. Buyers would go back in control. So I do think that we should be fine for SRE. Just monitor if it stays or closes below the 200-day moving average, and I think you'll be good. Let's have a look at IR, what was it? INTC, excuse me. Is this also a June 12 entry? Oh, Monday. Okay. So that was over here. Ooh. Uh, well, not sure. Okay. Where's your stop loss? Like over here? 90, 96, 87. Okay. Give me one sec. Hey Nesmil, thanks for dropping by. Got a little bit of a cold right now, and when we try to turn on my cam, uh, it's a little slow just because I haven't fixed the Wi-Fi yet. But yeah, thanks for dropping by. Uh, Thank you, NYSE. Yeah, so yeah, Nesmil's been helping with Prime Automation and helping me like fix the trades over there. Very cool guy. And yeah, okay, back to INTC. Ooh, okay. I think we gotta investigate this on a lower time frame. I mean, you could argue that this is a consolidation pattern, right? You could also say, yeah, I see it, bullish butt cheeks to an extent, right? And then your neckline um would be this thing, right? Breakout. So you know what? If you draw it like this, it looks like you did get a retest. So if you draw it like this, then you could say, oh, you have a wedge, right? You got your bullish butt cheek, you draw the trend line, it is a retest. You did open the next candle above the 618 on the 12 hour. Yeah. So I do think this is a retest, but I don't know why this stuff isn't loading. Uh, Go back to the daily. Don't know why okay. So you are above the zero line here on the chart prime oscillator Pro Plus, right? It is green. There is the possibility that you continue to try to go test this trend line. Notice that your delta pulse wave is still pointed down. So until this curves or returns back up, I don't know. I think you'll be in drawdown for quite a while. Let's turn on our predictive ranges. So you almost hit the 618 to the upside. It's possible you could be in drawdown up until 112.7, right? It could end up wicking to this area right here, tapping that 786, and then coming back up. And yeah, I do think 177 would probably be the stop here. Now your risk reward isn't that high, but let's turn this on and then let's turn this off. But yeah, I mean, you would have a solid chance, right? So first take profit 157, 179, and maybe 200, all the way maybe to the final extension if you can. But I think I'll probably call it quits from there. You can see that there was an FVG at this point. You haven't taken. Oh no, have you gotten into liquidity there? I guess not. No, you haven't gotten the liquidity on the FVG. So again, you can go down to that FVG to really take the liquidity from that. Yeah, I think you'll be fine. Just make sure to respect your levels, right? Especially with SRE. If you break below that 200-day moving average, probably call it quits from there. But yeah, okay, that about does it for SRE and INTC. Let's have a look at Bitcoin. So again, on the weekly, we closed strong, right? And I did say you would return to that 200-week moving average, and lo and behold, you did. So we can see that Bitcoin struck the FVG to the top side at around 67,000 and since rejected from it, right? We'll only get the removal of liquidity next week, right? When this closes, it'll show that it's taken out the FVG liquidity, but we can see here that it's taken um, up to that most traded volume. We plotted this potential short here, and unfortunately we weren't able to act on. That being said, I think there is hope for Bitcoin to maybe push up a little bit more. Now, remember that when we were reviewing the fundamentals earlier, there are more shorts. What we could see is a potential move back to that point of control, right, before ultimately tanking from there. Not a great drawing. Let me do this properly. Before ultimately tanking from there. Let's try to look at some of our levels here, and I'll turn off some of our indicators so that we can maybe see them a little bit better. Excuse me. So our first mate, so we have our first level at around 68,000, right? I'm just gonna plot that there, right? We also have the FVG that we hit over here, and we can see that the 786 is resting somewhere here. So if I quickly remove our drawings and the circle, oh, Bitcoin could have a potential move back to around 72,000 before tanking. So it could be over here, or we could be looking at this range right here. Now, where would Bitcoin probably fall back to the quantum reactor? We can see that this area right here is a high volume node, so Bitcoin could stall here for a while before maybe going back up. Excuse me. And this region right here is also a relative high volume node. I mean, it's more than the gap here. So we could be looking at this range for Bitcoin. So let's look at USDT dominance and maybe, okay, perfect. So USDT dominance is starting to bounce, right? We were tracking this last week. It fell out of the wedge. It's now bouncing off this level. It could be creating bullish butt cheeks down here. So let me just delete this. Oh, not that. This, and this. So quite close to our level, not exactly at our level, right? But it is starting to bounce. So we could have bullish butt cheeks come to the scene. So we might have one more push for Bitcoin as it tries to form that right cheek. Let's look at the daily. Oh, hey, Brian J, welcome. We can see that the daily CPO plus is at that zero line, right? It's gonna test. Let's see if it bounces off. If it bounces off, we should look for shorts. We can see that the Delta Pulse Wave did dip, but it is regaining strength, right? It's flattening out a bit, but it could tilt back up. So a little bit of a couple mixed signals, right? On one hand, your 12-hour is showing the potential for a bullish right cheek to form, or a bottom right cheek to form, which could push price action on all cryptos up. But over here, on the daily, until we see whether or not this bounces, we have really no idea. And not to mention, we have our uh, Fed news later today, so that is also something we have to watch out. Give me a second. All right, I'm back. Let's have a look at how oil's doing. So oil has since bounced off the 200-week moving average, and for the USDT version, it stopped at around $74. Right, so it is now bouncing off that 200-week moving average. And let's turn off a couple things here so that we can visibly see what we're actually looking at. So we did try to enter over here, right? There was a liquidity zone over here as well, but it's since broken. Now, we bounced off the 200-week moving average. The 200-day moving average is approaching, right? And if these two have a cross, excuse me, we're likely to see a bullish oil. Now, when we read the news earlier, there were a lot of there's a lot of sentiment behind it saying there's going to be a surplus of oil. That may be true, but remember that infrastructure was destroyed. Oil in and of itself can't necessarily go back to what it once was, just because it takes time to create that infrastructure again. So as we tap this 200-week moving average, there is a good chance that this goes back all the way to at least the point at which we broke down, which is around 87, right? It might not hit our targets anymore of all-time highs, but again, come Friday, we have the deal signing between Iran and the US, and it happens to be on a weekend. So I'm really skeptical that oil is going to continue to break down. I think more likely it's going to break to the upside. And we can see that on the daily, we are at that bottom extremity, right? We are starting to curve on the delta pulse wave, so we may see a pushback in oil. Now, if we drop down to CL USDT and maybe go for the 4 hour, let's focus on this. And by the way, it is 10, but we'll look for setups maybe at 10:15, just because we had a look at INTC and SRE first. We can see on the 4 hour, we have a ton of bottoming signals, right? Multiple bullish dips, green diamonds galore, oversold, money flow divergence. Delta Pulse Wave also printed a bullish div with buyers starting to take back control. So this could be the bottom for oil, a local bottom. Even if it starts consolidating, right? We can probably see a move back to the upside. I am thinking maybe a move back to 86 or 85 is likely. And if we pull out our predictive ranges, right? 85 is somewhere near that 618. So I think very likely we are gonna have to see if we can get to 85. So I'll set an alert. Right. Again, I am still long. It's in a little bit of drawdown right now, but I do think that we have a good chance of pushing to that 85 mark, able to get out in profits. Or if things are really strong over here and we start breaking these levels, such as 91, then we can probably stay in up until our final take profit around 120. Yeah, by the way, if anyone has any questions or things they want me to look at, just let me know. Right, we're just going through the a normal spiel of Bitcoin, USDT dominance, oil. Let's have a look at gold, how it's been doing. So our predicted long on gold is playing out fairly well. We can see that, the 1 hour is now bullish, with the 12 hours still technically bearish, but I am a little bit worried for gold here. Okay, let's have a look at STI and then jump back to gold. Oh, STI, uh, this one, Nasdaq, Selenium. All right, so okay, so I think this is what we said last week that if it could bounce from here, it will continue up, but I guess it failed. See what it's doing right now. So the Delta Pulse Wave is still completely flat, right? Sellers are still in control. I do think you could go down for that FEG or quantum reactor. You have your chick magnet at 1697. So did you happen to start longing over here? Gur? Okay. and adding while coming down. Okay. So where did you start going long? Over here or over here? Okay. Okay. Do you still have like liquid or do you not have anything else? Because I'm going to be frank, it is a little bit of a scary position you're in. Uh, a little bit, yeah, it's quite scary. So if you were over here and you were able to add down here, you should be okay. But if you start adding down as like over here, rather, I think that's a little bit dangerous. Now, how much per ooh, I am gonna say, based on how SDI is looking right now, it's more probable it continues to the downside at around 17. So let's have a look at maybe a lower time frame. If you look, there's just a massive gap there. I mean, you do have a bullish div right here. Point of you are being held up by the point of control, but there's just a massive gap in volume, right? Let's go to the 12 hour. Yeah, I wouldn't discount it. I do think it could go down as low as 17. If it goes down to 19, could it dump to 10? Ooh, I mean, it could. Yeah, there is a chance because of the fact that uh you have a massive gap, but I don't think it will dump to 10 straight away, right? It'll stop at maybe 15. So if you're already in deep, right, NFA, but if you're in deep, what I would do is if I break and close below 17, I'm just gonna cut my losses for another day. Good morning. Yeah, it's hard just because we're not at any points where, for example, the CPO plus would find some normal support. It could be another day or two, but it's difficult to ascertain when we get that bounce. Morning, little fish. Uh, I will say the 1 hour is kind of on your side, right? I mean, this is a fairly bearish move, but again, 17 would be the dynamic reactor. You're in between reactors as we speak. So this right here is a no trade zone for me. But if you look, your 1 hour delta pulse wave is green. So if you're able to find support at that change of character and you're able to come back to maybe 23, I think you have a good chance of just being able to get out there. If it rejects, get out. But if it continues, I would just maybe wait for a little bit. Again, I'm not discounting the possibility it goes down, right? And I'm not handling your accounts. So just be very careful. The possibility to head down is there. But I will say the sort of line in the sand for me is 17. Close below 17, close below the 1 hour dynamic reactor, close below uh, that level, I do think you're out of the count. And you have to just suck up the pain, the temporary pain for now, and then walk another day. Yeah. Anyways, uh, on the bright side, the 1 hour could give you a bounce, right? But I wouldn't confuse hope for reality at this moment. So play it safe, right? Break below 17. Just get out if you can. Yeah, actually, let's look at beat. It's one of those things that I was able to call here, but unfortunately I wasn't able to share or add it to you guys. But we were able to call it and go through the recordings. We actually plotted it here. Uh, Not only that, but right now beat could hop back. It could bounce back, right? It's a little bit dangerous to long a coin that's just on a parabolic drop, right? But it is nearly oversold here on the 12 hour. It is a scam coin, but it could have potential. We can see that it is on the dynamic reactor as we speak, and we plotted this line over here based on the dynamic reactor. It could bounce at the quantum reactor as well. Something to watch. I'm gonna set alerts for beat down here, perhaps. Any longs on beat will have to be sort of understood in the context that it could continue going down. So we're basically just trying to get a bounce from that point. Let's have a look at Solana because our what was this? Our article was talking about how Solana could move back to around $88. Uh, let's see here. It's a little bit messy. Let's turn off a couple things so we can actually look at what we're doing. And let us turn this off or to get rid of that. We can see Solana did break below the dynamic reactor here in the 4 hours, so it wasn't able to hold. That being said, there is a chance for maybe like a V-shaped recovery thing to happen. We can see that while we are losing on the Delta Pulse Wave, we are at the zero line here on the CPO plus. So a bounce at this point could be uh, an ideal play. Can't see smack dab right there on the relative volume node. We also can see that if this is a breakout, right, eventually this could be understood in the context of a retracement. If we pull up our predictive ranges, there's nothing here, but we can see that this was the final extension. Let's try to look at predictive ranges here in the 4 hour. So we did hit this fib right here. We're starting to come down. Let's try to look at it on the 30 minutes. See if we really got something to stand on. Okay, excuse me. All right, so here on the 30 minutes, ooh, this is a fight. So 30 minutes, if you're not able to get back above, right, this is technically a bearish cross, and it could start spelling the sort of end of this move, right? You could have a retracement or retracement back to around 71, basically testing this very shallow support to be made, right? And probably let's put a ray there instead. Let's go ahead and delete this. Ooh, but yeah, I think we're gonna have to wait a little bit on Solana, but if we're able to basically break out of this and stay above, I'd wait for some kind of retest and then go long. Ooh, what are you planning to do with it, little fish? So we are looking at relatively the same level. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, of course. Nice. What indicator is that ribbon that you have there? That looks pretty cool. Mm, ooh, I'll have a look at it later then. But yeah, looks very cool, very cool. And I can see that you also added like your quantum and dynamic reactor. Yeah, I think that's gonna be very strong. I wonder how it reacts with the delta pulse wave. Probably could try that out. Excuse me. But yeah, it looks like Solana is having that strong reaction that we did think it could have here in the 30 minutes. So my target will be something like this, and if it plays out, we could probably go long on Solana, right? Now let's have a look at Hype. So Hype has been doing fairly well for itself, uh, and that's it's sort of short in this, right? Right now, Hype could be setting up for bearish butt cheeks, right? That said, the 1 day is still pretty strong. Uh, the Delta Pulse Wave does look like it could still run, right? It's not kinked all the way down. It still has sort of this trajectory to it, so it could continue its way up, but we are back at all-time highs. In fact, this was an all-time high right here. And while we did bounce off this dynamic reactor, if USDT dominance again is heading to the upside, Hype is going to be one of the first coins to basically drop dead. Well, not drop dead, but like it's going to tank a little bit hard. So if we put our stop loss around this 618, or if we can check out some of our levels here, right? Oh, yeah, I think this is clear then. We could have a probable move back down to this point of control, which does give us a nice 1 to 2.5 risk reward. Hype did get back above the zero line, so let's see how Hype does. I will set alerts uh, over here. So first thing at this high volume node, second at this 618, and then third at this liquidity zone. Then we can go from there. Let's have a look at Pengu. So it's one of the points I do like to have a look at. All right, back. We are at this liquidity zone right now. Could have a bounce here, but I think Pengu might doesn't look that great. You can see it's like chopping itself. It is bearish on the 12 hour, so might have to move away from that. Let's have a look at ADA. Cardano. Okay. Ooh, bearish div here on Cardano, 12 hours. So it did bounce up. And funny enough, that was one of our predicted entries. We might be able to or probably, no, no, no. Hold on. Let me just move this to the side here. Hold on, guys. Okay, I'm back. Uh, yeah, no, I don't have faith in Cardano. This could be this could be a head and shoulders starting to form. So, right, I mean, you had a massive move to the downside. You had a bounce, but if we look here, not only could it be a head and shoulders, right, could also be a bear flag, ascending wedge as well, right? And if it breaks down here, your right shoulder would be a retest, and it'll further break to the downside. Excuse me. So if I grab a head and shoulders pattern as we look for potential entries. Oh, okay, let's fix this again. From here to here to here to here. Let's say it breaks down to here, right? And then if we grab trend line from this point down to this point right here, place that underneath. Yeah, we would break further to the downside, 0.1393. Now, we don't have any predictive ranges to the downside, I don't think. There's really nothing left. Let's have a look on the daily and see if there is something to work with. Let me hide this. Let's wait for it to load. In the meantime, I would set an alert back for 1634. Oh yeah, no, look at that. Delta Pulse Wave going back bearish, and you can't even break above your zero line here on the CPO plus. Right, you're not even oversold on quite a lot of your metrics, and we we have support at 1488. Let's see if there's any predictive ranges to the downside. Look, we have an extension down to 1346. So genuinely, I would probably look for a short on ADA right now. So the 1 hour for ADA is, oh, look at that. It's also going to be bearish here on the 1 hour. I'll look for a short on ADA with a target of uh, probably that extension down here, but yeah, that would be pretty decent. Um, let's plot the short. So it would look something like this, right? You can do something like that. Excuse me. So over here, and then we can drag this all the way down. So that would be a 1, 2, 3.5 risk to reward. It's not bad. And we can do slightly higher so that in case it stops right before that fib. So 1 to 3.3, and that's with a fairly conservative stop loss, right? We're basically above this liquidity zone over here on the 1 hour. So I guess what I do is I'll set an alert for 0.17 and over here at the point of interest and see how we react. Because again, I do think we break down off the trend line first, but based on the 1 hour, we are getting some kind of bounce first. So we can probably frame a short on ADA and then target that extension on the daily. Let's like have a look at Ave. So our bullish butt cheek on Ave did play out, ended up moving to the upside. And, there is a chance that it continues to move to the upside. So we did get more bullish butt cheeks, but we did return back on the 1 hour. Let's change this to the 4 hour. Excuse me, guys. Okay, I'm back. Ooh, it's in between the reactors, so technically a no trade zone, right? But you could argue it's forming bullish butt cheeks. It is also near that zero line, so let's try to see if we can form a wedge here, right? Could do something like this. Back to that point of interest, back to that, yeah, back to the point of interest, probably even on the daily, right? But this would be the first sort of hurdle. Let's look at it on the 30 minutes. Maybe we can have like a small swing here on Ave before we go. So there's still about 31 minutes on the show. So again, if anyone has any questions with regard to maybe like tokens, coins, whatnot, or even indicators, just let me know. NCPL. Okay, let's have a look at NCPL a little bit. Uh, ooh, 3 minutes. Uh, okay. Okay, let's just set an alert here on Aave, right? Bounce off, we can enter on that long. Break down, then we short. I think that's simple enough. And then we can probably short down to this node right here, 67. Ah, terrible, terrible number. No, 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 no. Actually, we were doing our grad rehearsal today. So for context, I'm about to graduate college this 21st. So a little bit antsy, right? Graduating. And then I go to law school at 13, and my friend from high school, who we both attended the same college, was like, so you know how they're like we're gonna be live stream marching into the gym. As soon as I get to the camera, I'm gonna do a 6-7 with slowly and with dignity. And then he started doing the 6-7 and like the face with the tongue out slowly, and I just lost my mind earlier. Like it was so hot, and then here's this just random dude doing a 6-7 with so much passion. It was insane. Thank you so much, NYC. But yeah, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I think you. How do you have a picture of my friend? That was him. Yeah, pretty much. Uh, oh, thank goodness this part isn't being recorded. Oh, she's gonna kill me. Okay, but back to Ave. I do think this will be the plan. Alert, ready, bounce off. Then honestly, it bounces off here, right? If it bounces off, goes back down here, bounces off, we take that long. If it breaks down, we go short. If we get above this point as well, then wait for that retest and go from there, go long from there, right? And as OC said, it's not about the breakout, it's about the retest. Excuse me. Let's have a look at NCPL. I feel like Ness, this is one of the first streams that you've entered where it's just a little bit unhinged. Although you know what, I think Piper, OC, and I together create a very unhinged show. I don't know. What do you think, Little Fish and Gur? TRM, I feel is going to pump. Okay. Well, that capital, I don't know. Uh, it's not great. Let's turn this off because it's not helping. No, I hate to say it, but I think that capital's going down. Yeah, it's going down. So, I mean, you did have that push to the upside. It did stay bullish for a while, but now you're just back to being bearish. It's almost like this never happened, right? You're back to bearish on your dynamic. You close below your quantum. So unless you can get back above, which I don't think is going to happen, given you have room to extend and your delta pulse wave is already starting to slope to the downside, I think that capital is going down. Let's try to look and see if there's any fibs and if support and resistance is going to help us because the liquidity zones are just not it. Let's wait for it to load. Okay, so FVG is zero point 0.6, right? So let's mark that. Notice that zero point 0.6 is also the last relative volume node before you have a massive gap back down to that prime block over here. So I'd set an alert. If you're not oversold by the time you get to 0.06, I don't think there's a chance to bounce. I think you'll bounce much lower, maybe at the change of character or the liquidity block. So I would be more keen on potentially shorting this thing. There is still room to short. If we go down to the 4 hour, and then let's clear our drawings because it's a little bit hectic, right? You're also setting up for the bearish div or the bearish cross right here. Again, what I would do, zero point 0.6 or around this region, expect it to go down. This will probably cross. Wait for the retest. If it rejects, take a short at that point. That gap though, yeah, uh, yeah, massive. I mean, if we look up here, it's also crazy. Hold on, let's go back to data one day, and then let's turn this off. Yeah, I mean, you're 200. Oh, yeah, there was a time you were trading at like 300. It was insane. Okay. But yeah, net capital's lost a ton of its value. I will say, if net capital can break above its 200-day moving average and stay above it this time, I think you have a good chance of maybe eventually revisiting the 200 week. It's going to take maybe 4 years, but there's a good chance. Down to like 24. From zero point 0.6, 24 is a 40x. You and me both. That being said, 1 day, 12 hour, room to move down. I think it goes down. Yeah. If it goes down and bounces, I guess you could say that it will go to the 200-day moving average, but until that happens, I think it's going to go down. Let's have a look at CRM and let's try to look for a trade we can do after that. Let me just blow my nose again. I'm really sorry, guys. This cold is insane. I got to the house, no cold, and then I took a short nap until 9, suddenly got a cold. What is it? It was not even raining today. It is unfortunate, but The hustle doesn't end even if you're sick. Although if you are sick, please get some rest, guys. Uh, Either way, CRM. I mean, you know what? It did technically break to where we said it would go, right? But the retest is not there. Try to delete this. Uh, Man, the power. Okay, first things first. You have a weakening power bar over here, so you could argue that you're almost done on the move, right? We're also at a level where previously you did get a bullish div, right? But as it stands, given that you have room to extend and your Delta Pulse Wave is not showing any strength, I think you go to this extension right here. So I am gonna be a little bit counter to what you said, Drew. I do think it'll still go down. That being said, if you go to the weekly, maybe we have an argument brewing. So weekly is confirmed bearish, 200-day cross below that 200 week. But we also have that bearish cross happening on the reactors. No, I don't know if it's. I don't know if we're. I don't think so. I think it breaks down. Yeah. So weekly has room to go down. So not a good sign already. Delta Pulse Wave is in the red. Not a good sign. This right here is fairly bearish as well. So what I would do is really just wait for it to hit. Oh yeah, and look, this line, the extension on daily is packed in this relative high volume node, with the next one being all the way down to 125. So I think I'd wait, right? This range right here could be a potential bounce zone, even if it's just a dead cat bounce, right? So this area right here, that's where I would probably look for entry at 156. Ooh, yeah, I think you should. So even if it does bounce, right? Maybe we can go back to the daily to see where it could bounce, right? Like the highest potential bounce it could do if it does collapse, or even if it runs, right? So if you have room right here to go down and bounce, let's turn this on and let's turn this off real quick. You're probably just gonna bounce back to 177, right? So you could, yeah, I think this would be an ideal stop loss. So this would be sort of the trade you would take. But again, caveat is that you do get a strong reaction from the CPO plus, whether that's oversold, reversal triangle, what have you. Delta Pulse Wave shows strength, and you bounce in terms of price action. Okay, so that's sort of what I see with CRM. Uh, will go lower. Time to look at BNB. BNB almost hit our short entry, which sucks, but is what it is. But BNB, unlike say Ethereum, I do have more hopes for. We can see that this region right here is a rectangle, so we could potentially get something working here. I will set an alert. So what I'd look for is some kind of break to the downside. So break to the downside, retest break with the target of this liquidity zone right here. So that's one play we could do. Aave not being decisive right now. Let's have a look at some other potential coins we can have a trade for. Let's have a look at Aptos. Ooh, a little choppy here on the 30 minutes on the 4 hour. Yeah, I mean, look at that. Really choppy. How's oil doing? Oil is pushing, so I will probably put an alert back here. Let's also send an alert at 77. Aptos is a little choppy. How's USDT dominance? Let's change this back to the 12 hour. USDT dominance still bullish on the 12 hour. Yeah, I think I'm gonna watch this. How's Bitcoin? Bitcoin is back to 64. Actually, let's have a look at Bitcoin down here on the 4 hour. Did play out pretty well. Could have a potential long here on Bitcoin. Okay, one thing I do want to point out is that if we go, for example, on Bitcoin, and we do one thing right over here, and we change it to maybe the 2 day, so let's go to the 1 day and then to the 2 day. Excuse me. Okay, I'm back. Taking a while to load. Can you guys still hear me? Guys still hear me? Question mark. Okay, thank you so much, NYSE. Yeah, don't really know what's happening, but when I do move, right, Wi-Fi should be good because I'm not fighting anyone for it. And my room is technically the farthest from the router, so that's also a little bit of an issue. But again, if you look at the 2 day, I think something interesting is happening with Bitcoin. So notice that on the 1 day, we had those bullish butt cheeks form across multiple weeks, right? But Bitcoin might be having bullish butt cheeks of its own on the 2 day. I don't know about you, but I mean, you did have a bullish div right here. So we may have bullish butt cheeks here on the 2 day. So I will set an alert back for this liquidity zone. Let me do this. I will set an alert back here for this liquidity zone and at around uh this whale support because I do think we could have another long here, which does mean that if we're right, we should probably start looking for shorts back down to this region, right? This will be a fairly tight stop loss, fairly tight, right? And yeah, the goal would be back to, yeah, this should be good. Back to that neckline. We could also probably go back to 70 and then die from there, right? But yeah, we sent alerts. So you still have about 14 minutes. Let's look for a proper entry. Aptos, kind of crazy for me. I don't think I want to trade it. Let's have a look at Bitcoin Cash. Excuse me. So that was from the old short. Ooh, okay, 30 minutes sort of looks bearish. I mean, we did get a bounce, but we are below those reactors. Yeah, I think the play here, alert, would be to wait for a break to the downside, retest, drop. That would be the play. 4 hour is pretty bearish. Delta pulse wave showing a ton of weakness, right? And this would be the play. So right now everything's in waiting. And I will say again, we have FOMC later with a new chair. Powell's sort of still uh uh LARPing in the distance. So we might have something hawkish. And if we have something hawkish, that's not going to translate well to cryptocurrency. We will probably have a massive reaction to that. Hey, Goshani, welcome. So I do think right now we could frame for a potential short, right? As USDT dominance does increase, it might not even form bullish butt cheeks anymore. This could just be a breakdown retest, right? But I do think we will see a little bit more pain on these coins. Of course, I'll be staying up today, so let you guys know if we can short here if we're not able to come up or produce a trade. Let's adjust this slightly because we do see that the 786 is over there. So I do think we get something like this, and then a break down on the 4 hour to that 618. So on the alerts are going to be Bitcoin Cash. We're also looking at a potential short on Hype. Uh, Technically close to right now, right? We're trying to aim for that 30-minute 618 for potential short on Hype. And for gold, well, we could have something based on the 12 hour, but it's a little early to tell. Excuse me. Just to recap, let's go back and have a look at the fundamentals. So I'm going to stop streaming first and let's go to our fundamentals so that people who came in a little late can see what we're looking at. Again, fear is at 21, so it's an increase, right? But historically, when we reach 21, we do have that dip back down until we have a conclusive jump back to, uh, I think 30-ish, right? Looking at our levels here on the 1 day, more shorts than longs, but we're closer to the long side in terms of price action. The 1 week has more longs than shorts, and again, lots of clusters. So there is that incentive to go short. 30-day, you have about even, though you are closer to a cluster on the top side, so you may have like a whiplash before you're able to go short. 90-day, same thing, but price action is closer to the downside. If we go to the 1 year, of course, more shorts than longs, but we're closer to the clusters for the longs. Looking over here at the RSI heat map, lots of coins are weak. But hype, again, one of the coins that we said we wanted to potentially short is overbought. So that would be uh, it would be sound to maybe look for a short on hype rather than looking for continuous shorts on some of these coins. But the likes of Bitcoin Cash and ADA are really just terrible um, fundamentally. So they could be dead, right? If we go down to the 24-hour, right? Oh yeah, let's have a look at Aster before we end. Aster could be something nice to look at. NWLD. RSI heat map on the, let's go down to the 3 day. Incentive to go down 64, right? Excuse me. Let's look at the 1 week and massive incentive to go down to maybe 62. Of course, we're also looking at Solana surging because of SpaceX. But having said that, right, and we talked about this, is that while you could see a move back down to 83 because we are at resistance, there is that pullback, the potential pullback on Solana. And with USDT dominance increasing as we speak, a potential short is probably more of the way to go, right? Fed decision. Uh, Fed Reserve began its 2 day meeting on Tuesday. Rate decision expected Wednesday, so that's today. 96% to no change. Again, like I said, this is even before CME Fed Watch. Rate cuts are probably not going to happen because inflation and output are kind of fucked at the moment, right? We the Fed noticed or was able to measure that despite cutting rates, there was no significant increase in output. So the only financial tool that they could probably use right now is quantitative easing. But the issue with quantitative easing, as I keep mentioning, is that there's no guarantee that what the quantitative easing we did back then will work today. So just as a recap, quantitative easing, the last time they did it, led to an increase in the nominal value of stocks without necessarily jeopardizing the everyday man, right? They were able, grocery prices relatively stayed the same. However, if you were to do it now, there is a high probability that it will jeopardize the everyday man. Prices of your consumer basket will probably increase as a result, and which is why, as much as possible, it makes sense for them to also try to be wary of quantitative easing. So on Friday as well, there is the U.S.-Iran agreement, which will be held in Switzerland, and with the tankers, it just lining up at the Strait of Hormuz right now, front running Friday with a lot of news outlets saying there could be a substantial supply surplus as Gulf production returns. You have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt because it all hinges on the idea that these guys get along, right? It all hinges on the idea that the US and Iran are able to actually make that deal happen. But if it's not able to make that deal happen, then oil is just going to increase again. Because remember, when we looked at the fundamentals the other day, uh, OPEC did expect a continued shortage. So we have two conflicting analyses on the same thing. So the IEA thinks there's going to be a surplus, whereas OPEC thinks there's going to be a shortage. Only time will tell who's right, but everything hinges on them getting that deal. So we'll only know by Friday. So let me stop sharing screen and let's go back to the technical chart because that is where the fun always is. And excuse me again. All right, I'm back. Yeah, honestly, even if the US and Iran cut a deal, I think Israel's kind of not it. uh, a little bit difficult if you have a partner who isn't keen on seeing your vision eye to eye. So I do think we could push, right? And again, I will stay up. We'll be there for FOMC and for the hackers in in my stream. I'll see you later, of course. We still have about 3 minutes left on the show, so if anyone has any uh, last minute questions or thoughts they want to share or things they want me to look at, just let me know. And having said that, my guess will be the short hype. Oh yeah, let's have a look at Aster before we go. See if there's anything we can do with Aster. Listen. Ooh, big candle. That is that is a big PP candle if I ever saw one. So we are at resistance right now. We are bullish. This will need to retest eventually, right? So I will plot the extensions on the 30 minutes so we can actually see them on the 4 hour. And then let's have a look at the daily. But Aster, given this big PP candle, is gonna retest for sure eventually. Let's pull out the fibs. Ego. Okay, okay. Let's let that load and let's have a look at Ego. EHGO. Eshalgo. Um, yes. Uh, is this a new stock? I think it's relatively new. Yeah. So this was July 2, 2024. It's relatively new. Um, let's go to the 4 hour. Massive gap though, and just for accounting, let's actually plot them gaps properly. Then let's head to the 4 hour. When is it ideal time to short? Uh, well, it's hard to tell. It is a parabolic move, right? By the looks of it, very heavily manipulated. If I had to tell you when it was safe to short, right? I'd wait for some kind of retest, then short it, right? If your point of control is able to stay and you're able to basically close like this, it might take a few hours or even days before you get an ideal short on this. Even then, right, there's a huge conflict here, and I wouldn't advise you to touch this or trade this. CPO plus heading to the upside, right? Delta pulse wave sellers are supposedly in control, but in terms of momentum and direction, it's still fairly strong. I wouldn't uh maybe we can explore this towards the weekend. I'll keep it in mind, but yeah, no, I wouldn't touch this. Yeah, I don't know if it seems. I think it is. But yeah, I'll keep you guys posted. Again, I do think hype is going to be one of those things we can probably short. Uh, Aster is also something we can eventually short, eventually. So it's over here. But yeah, that is our 1 hour 30 minutes for today. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll keep you guys posted on my channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, 9:30 a.m. Oh, I will say, I'll let you guys know if I'm able to make it because we're doing some photo shoots tomorrow because last day in undergraduate university. But I'll let you guys know. Uh, Generally, I think I'll get home before our stream because I do miss you guys. So yeah, for the hackers, I'll see you later. But once again, I am Langstrom, and don't forget to always use a stop loss. Have a great day, everyone. Stay tuned to FOMC. It's probably going to cause some really shitty things to happen on the chart. And trade safe. See you guys tomorrow. Take care.